Here we go. Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. We're live now. Good evening to this full council meeting, AGM. I'd just like to ask Joe, please, to do a roll call. I think we're all here. Before we do, I'd just like to remind everyone to remain on mute as normal. We've got very used to this medium now, so use MIS in the chat to speak as normal, please. Okay, Joe, ready with the roll call?
Yes, thank you. I'll call out councillors' names and just indicate if you're present. Thank you. Rob Appleyard. I see you're there, Rob. Thank you. Tim Ball.
Here.
Sarah Bevan.
Present.
Colin Blackburn.
Present.
Alison Bourne.
I'm here.
Shelley Bromley.
Present.
Neil Butters.
Present.
Vic Clark.
Present.
Sue Craig.
Present.
Paul Crossley. Come back to Paul. Jerry Curran.
Present.
I've had apologies from Councillor Chris Dando, who has a clash with a town council meeting. Jess David.
Present.
Tom Davies.
Present.
Sally Davis.
Present.
Doug Deacon.
Present.
Winston Dogood.
Present.
Mark Elliott.
Present.
Michael Evans.
Present.
Andy Furs.
Here.
Kevin Guy.
Present.
Alan Hale.
Present.
Liz Hardman.
Present.
Steve Hedges. Joel Hurst.
Present.
Lucy Hodge.
Present.
Duncan Hounsell.
Present.
Sean Hughes.
Present.
Eleanor Jackson.
Well, I'm present for the moment, but I also have a town council meeting and an annual parish meeting going on. And as I've missed this meeting innumerable times, I feel I will have to drop out of this meeting at some point and swap over to the parish meeting. But I'll indicate in the chat when that is so that you know when I've gone and when I've come back again.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Grant Johnson.
I'm here.
Dr. Kumar.
Present, please.
Hal McPhee.
Present.
Ruth Malloy.
Present.
Paul May.
Present.
Matt McCabe.
Present.
Sarah Moore.
Present.
Robin Moss.
Present.
Paul Myers.
You'll be able to treat the working man this way. One day we'll form a union.
I didn't hear Paul, but I might have missed that.
Present.
Lisa, thank you. Lisa O'Brien.
Present.
Michelle O'Doherty.
Present.
Barrett Pankania.
Present.
June Player.
Present.
Vic Pritchard.
Present.
Manda Rigby.
Present.
Dina Romero.
Present. Sorry, my video doesn't seem to work very well, so I'm just staying off of it now.
Thank you, and we can hear you loud and clear. Thanks. Mark Roper.
Present.
Richard Samuel.
Present.
I've had apologies from Councillor Bruce Shern, who has a town council clash. Brian Simmons.
Present.
Alistair Singleton.
Present.
Sean Stevenson McGall.
Present.
Andy Waite.
Present.
Karen Walker.
Present.
Sarah Warren.
Present.
Karen Warrington.
Present.
Chris Watt. Ryan Wills.
Present.
David Wood.
Present.
Joanna Wright.
Present.
Thank you. Do we have
Chair,
yes?
Chair, I'm here. Steve Hedges, I'm here. I got
Yep.
really bad internet, so sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And Paul Crossley? No. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Just joined.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay, Paul, we've got you. Thank you. Okay, first up, well, the next item on the agenda is the election of the new chair of council. I'd like to invite proposals from the floor, please. Councillor Mize, I believe you've got a proposal.
I have indeed. Councillors, I'm very pleased to propose Councillor Lisa O'Brien for the position as the next chairman of the council. Having served as vice chairman during this last year, she's demonstrated tenacity, diligence and efficiency in assisting in the smooth running of the council meetings under difficult circumstances. Lisa first became a Baines councillor in 2015, having been elected to represent the ward of South Keynsham. However, she had already been a member of Keynsham Town Council since 2011, subsequently serving for 8 years, 2 of which were as chairman, so had some time to hone her skills both for managing meetings and ensuring even-handed debate. During her first term as a Baines councillor, she was a member of the Planning, Housing and Economic Development Scrutiny Panel, where she particularly focused on the development and improvement of social housing in the area. She was also closely involved in scrutinising retail activity in both city and town centres. In addition, she was a member of the Avon Pension Fund Committee, taking a keen interest in moving from investment in fossil fuel companies towards emerging market infrastructure schemes. Re-elected in 2019, she's currently a member of the Climate Emergency and Sustainability Scrutiny Panel, with a particular concern to reduce waste and litter in our area. Separate from her council responsibilities, Lisa's a long-time trustee of Keynsham and District MENCAP Society. She has always stood up and campaigned in support of the vulnerable, and she has learnt from experience the challenges and obstacles that some residents can face. It remains her #1 priority to champion rights. As a personality, she's outward-looking, enthusiastic and sincere. She has a strong sense of fair play and humanity for all, together with a can-do attitude to difficult issues. I feel she'll manage this council's affairs most effectively.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Councillor Myers. I believe we've got a seconder, Councillor Samuel, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm delighted to second Councillor Lisa O'Brien as Chair of Council for the forthcoming municipal year. Lisa has served on resources, planning and housing and climate emergency PDS panels during her time as a councillor, as well as the Avon Pension Fund. She is a hard-working councillor for Keynsham South, and she has just completed, as Councillor Myers says, a year as Vice Chair of Council. I'm sure she will be an excellent Chair of Council, and I commend her in seconding this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. Are there any other nominations from the floor? I take that as a no. Okay, so as there's no further nominations from the floor, I'd like to invite the other 2 political groups to comment, please. Can I have Councillor Walker, please, the leader of the independent group?
Thank you, Chair. I'm really happy to support Lisa as the new Chair of Council 21-22. Lisa is an easygoing person to get on with. Lisa made me very welcome when I visited the MENCAP celebrations in Keynsham in 2018 when I was Chair of Council. Since then, I've been lucky to have Lisa sit on the Climate and Sustainable Scrutiny Panel, of which I chair. Her commitment to scrutinising papers such as the homeless and rough sleepers. As I know, Lisa will support every effort to help those on the streets with mental health problems. Just recently, Lisa has taken on chairing the campaign against violence and sexual harassment against all people in our society. Lisa will make an excellent chair, and hopefully you will get the chain of office, which I know Eleanor has been looking after for last year. Well done, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen. Councillor Robin Moss for the Labour Group, please.
Yes, more than happy to congratulate Lisa on taking over as Chair of Baines for the next year. I think she will be a firm and decisive person in the chair, which will be good. I mean, I worked with Lisa over a couple of years in Keynsham when I helped set up what is now One Community Trust, converting the vicarage in Keynsham into a day centre for people, for younger people. Lisa took a keen interest in the work we was doing. She attended a number of events that we held, and supported us with some councillors' ward initiative money. So worked with Lisa, and it was a pleasure to do so. I think some advice to the rest of council about how we need to work with Lisa over the next year. I've always found that as long as you can provide Lisa with a good demonstration of commitment, a good firm argument on your case, and at least half a bottle of Prosecco, then you will have no problems in convincing of the merits of your case. Congratulations, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moss. So we've got a mover and second. It's been seconded. There are no further nominations. I've asked the group leaders to give their views. As in normal practice, we'll move to a vote, but I'll take the majority view. So therefore, can I ask anyone to make it clear whether they're voting against, please? I shall just pause there, just so everyone knows I'm pausing. Okay, can I have abstentions, please? Again, I'm just pausing. Okay, so that has been passed unanimously. Congratulations, Lisa, and I hope you have a very good year. Over to you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor First, and thank you all those who've spoken such glowing comments. I would just say that Councillor Moss is not quite correct that I can be swayed by a half bottle of Prosecco. A bottle of champagne might be a different matter, but we'll see. No, only joking. I, Lisa O'Brien, having been elected to the office of Chairman of Bath and North East Somerset Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Bath and North East Somerset Council. I should like to thank all of you councillors. I feel very honoured to have been elected to this position. The forthcoming year is likely to be another challenging one, when there will be many obstacles to overcome in order to achieve the best for our residents. For my term of office, I should like to be addressed as Madam Chairman. I hold the integrity of this council very dear, and I give you my word that I will do my utmost to uphold our constitution and manage the process of council to the very best of my ability. Thank you. I now, we move on to the appointment of Vice Chair. So can I have proposals from the floor to nominate a councillor to be Vice Chairman of Council for 21-22? I believe Councillor Samuels would like to make a nomination.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I'm delighted to propose Sean Stevenson McGall as the next Vice Chair of Council. Sean is a long-standing councillor, first elected for Oldfield Ward in 1999, then topping the poll in the same ward in 2003 and 2007. He didn't stand as a councillor in 2011, but returned to represent Oldfield in 2015 and retained the new ward of Oldfield Park in 2019. He is one of only 8 councillors remaining from the 1999 elections. He has worked tirelessly on the issues of HMOs and student housing and has given strong support to the local business community in Moorland Road. In recent years, during his time on the Avon Pension Fund, he has worked hard and campaigned strongly for the decarbonisation of the fund's investments. Sean originally moved to Bath to study at Newton Park, and after graduation, he initially worked at Bath College and now works at the University of Bath as the Student Engagement Manager. He is no stranger to civic office. He was previously Mayor of Bath, and I believe he will make an excellent Vice Chair, and I commend him to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. Can I have a seconder? I believe Councillor Myers.
Thank you. I'm delighted to second Councillor Stevenson McGall's nomination for Vice Chair. I've had the pleasure of working with Sean on a number of occasions, and each time it's been clear to me that he is passionate about doing his very best for the people he was elected to serve. Sean was first elected to Baines in 1999, at which point he was the youngest member in the chamber. He's been the Mayor of Bath, has served as a member of the Avon Fire Authority, and has been a governor of both Bath College and Bath Spa University. It's clear that he will bring a lot of valuable experience to the role of Vice Chair, and I have every confidence that he will be a great asset to the Council in the role.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Are there any other nominations? Can we therefore, using the process of majority voting, are there then any councillors voting against his appointment? Please indicate on the chat. Are there any wishing to abstain? Congratulations, Councillor McGall. Would you like to say a few words in your acceptance of office, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Can I firstly thank you, fellow members of Council, for showing their faith in me to support Madam Chairman in her role as Chairman of the Council this year. I look forward, if she is being double booked, to carrying out duties on behalf of you as her representative and your representative. Can I just thank the people who first got me into the politics, Councillor Ruth Griffiths, who was the Councillor for Oldfield Ward back in the mid-90s, where I first got involved with politics when I was a student, and my predecessor ward colleague, Will Sandry. I look forward to working with you all and deputising for Madam Chairman where needed. Thank you very much.
Could you, thank you.
Yes, and I will now
give your
my acceptance. Yep. I, Sean Stevenson McGall, having been elected to the office of Vice Chairman of Bath and North East Somerset Council, declare that I will take the office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it in accordance with the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct to which is expected of members of Bath and North East Somerset Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4, minutes of the last meeting of the 25th of March. Can I have a proposal from the floor that they are correct, please? Someone must say they'd like to.
Happy to propose, Madam Chairman.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Singleton, seconded. Seconded, please. Councillor Waite, thank you. Joe, can we have declarations of interest, please?
We can, and just to clarify on that last one, I think it was Councillor Kevin Guy who moved the minutes, and then Councillor Guy who seconded. Thanks very much. So in terms of declarations of interest, I haven't had any notified to me, but the monitoring officer has issued a general dispensation with regard to item 11, the allowances report, in relation to all councillors who are in receipt of allowances for their roles as councillors. And now is the opportunity if anybody wants to unmute and declare an interest if they have one that they haven't already notified. Thank you.
Okay, no further declarations submitted. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 6, and I would like to call on a vote, call upon someone to propose a formal vote of thanks to Councillor Andy First for his role as chairman. I believe Councillor Romero would like to make the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman. Sorry. First, I'd like to congratulate both Councillors O'Brien and Councillor Stevenson-McGall on being elected into their new leadership roles. I know that they will both be excellent in these roles. And now I'd like to move to the what I have been asked to do, which is to propose a vote of thanks for the sterling efforts of Councillor Andrew Furse for his chairing of this council over the last year. I think Andy may be the only chair ever to have not chaired a single meeting in the council chamber. Instead, he has chaired this council in the virtual world, a place we scarcely knew 12 months ago. We certainly had not heard of Zoom or Teams, and we would not have had an opinion on which was better. Well, hang on a moment, we are councillors. I expect we would have had an opinion. In many ways, he's been our very own Jackie Weaver, although I don't believe he's had to put anyone back into the waiting room for any misdemeanours. He has remained unflappable and good-humoured, even when uttering for the umpteenth time the now infamous line, "You are on mute." Andy, as I said, in these extraordinary times has chaired council meetings and also parish liaison meetings, plus council-wide health meetings. I know, though, that he has really treasured the citizens' ceremonies as and when these were allowed. These were in person, and by having to be smaller groups, felt that these were much more personal to those taking part. I know that he will be mentioning a few more highlights in his own speech in a moment. But before we hear that, I hope all in the virtual chamber will support the vote of thanks for the work that Councillor Andrew Furse has done in chairing this council for the last 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Myers, I believe would like to second.
Yes, thank you. On behalf of the Conservative group, I'd like to second this and thank Councillor Furse for his tenure as chair. The past 12 months have posed enormous and unprecedented challenges for the council, and despite our political differences, I'm delighted to say that Andy has risen to those challenges admirably. In short, he's guided the council's vessel through choppy waters and landed the passengers and crew safely ashore. For that, he is due our thanks and our council's utmost respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Councillor Walker.
Andy, this past year must have been not the easiest for you to chair full council meetings via Zoom. It must have been very challenging. I have to say you've done a superb job and taking all those that wish to speak via chat in order as they came in. I congratulate you. I am really sorry, though, that you didn't get to wear the chain of office, but when you do get your hands on it, just give it a try for size. Well done, Andy.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. And Councillor Moss.
Thank you. Well done, Andy, on what has been a difficult year. And I'm sure that that when you were first approached and asked if you wanted to be chair of the council, it wasn't the year that I guess that you anticipated. But I don't think we could have had anybody better in the chair to guide us through Zoom meetings and all the rest. So congratulations, and I'll follow what Karen said. At least try to wear the chain for 5 minutes, even if you're no longer chair. Well done, Andy. Thanks.
Thank you. I now invite Councillor Furse to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Ever so a big thank you for the move, Dina and Paul for moving and seconding, but also kind words from Karen and Robin on their comments. Thank you ever so much. It has been a strange civic year. When I was vice chair, we had a full council meeting in the Guildhall on the 25th of February, and that was the last 25th of February 2020, and that was the last time we all met in person at a full council meeting. And ever since then, ever since I took over the chairmanship on the 26th of May, it's been video conferencing all the way through, and now I'm stepping down via video conference as well. So, as I say, rather than working from home, we're living at work. I think that's a saying that I've heard very recently, which is very apt for many of us. As members know, full council, parish liaison, and the occasional council-wide meetings, as Dina mentioned, have all been online. And I brought there all different challenges, but I'd like to say that at least there were no talking cats or falling out over standing orders. So that was probably a big plus all the way through. broadly, there have been very few external events, although the new slimmed down version of the chair's role and calendar has reduced the number of external events anyway. There were fewer in this for past year. Of the few that I was permitted to attend were the citizenship ceremonies under government advice. That was mainly during the last summer. The numbers in the room were really reduced in a large room in the Guildhall, and following regulations and guidance, they were presented every week. So they were fast and furious. I did manage to wear the collar of office on those occasions, so I've actually managed to get it out of the drawer. Yeah, that was it really. But what was also good about those events were that they were very small and quite intimate. So it had a bit of a plus side to that. The other few events that I managed to get or not get to were the High Sheriff and all those other things that would normally be invited, the chair would be invited to. There was no invite to when the Duke of Cambridge visited Bath. But there were a few events, larger events during the summer, which I did choose to decline, thinking that it was not the right thing to be seen doing on behalf of Bath and North East Somerset, when guidance, although we were allowed to meet, guidance was quite clear about meeting and gathering, and I just thought it would send the wrong message to the wider residents of Bath and North East Somerset. So I tried to do the right thing in that position. Remembrance events, as you all know, are cancelled, but there was a special handing over a wreath to a train that went to Paddington from all parts of the Great Western Railway area, the whole southwest and South Wales. So that was nice. Not only did that, but I actually got onto a platform just to wave a train goodbye. So that was a bit of a plus from my perspective. Last month, sadly, I had to send a message of condolence to Her Majesty the Queen on behalf of us all on the sad passing of the Duke of Edinburgh. And the only forthcoming event really is the Shining Light Awards, which are next week. And it's been there's been lots of community nominations, which has been fantastic, and quite a difficult choice to get those winners through. But in fact, just by having nominations, they're all winners really, because it's shown what a wonderful community spirit there are in all parts of our Bath and North East Somerset. Finally, I'd just like to set out a number of thanks. I'd like to thank you all as members of the council for your patience over the last year. I think I've been fair and even-handed to all of us. I'd like to think I have been.
1 minute.
I'd like to also thank my political group and especially Councillor Craig for her support, and all group leaders for their support during the last year. Obviously the Chair's office, who have been giving me guidance and support as necessary, and Council office, particularly Joe, Mike and the other Mike, for their support over the last year, especially in dealing with the COVID restrictions and meeting protocols that have been rather challenging, and also for my wife and her patience and support over the last year as well. So a memorable year in all sorts of ways. I wish Councillor O'Brien well as her year as Madam Chairman and for Bath and North East Somerset. Good luck to her, and thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Andy. As Andy mentioned, as Councillor first mentioned, we did send a letter of condolence following the death of the Duke of Edinburgh, and I would now ask Council to observe a minute's silence to identify that. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 7, there is no urgent business that we have been informed of. So we move on to item 8, which is the election of leader of the council. Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, before I move to nominate the new leader of the council, I want to place on record the council's thanks for the work carried out by Dina Romero as leader. She led the council at its most testing time ever during the height of the pandemic, and we are all a debt of gratitude for the effort she has put in, not only to ensuring that key services to residents were maintained, but also the measures taken to stabilise the council's finances. I am, however, pleased to nominate Councillor Kevin Guy to be the next leader of the council. Kevin has represented the ward of Bathhaven North since 2019, and prior to that, he was a councillor in Telford Council. Kevin has held the cabinet post for children's services since 2019 and is an experienced councillor with many years of service across 2 authorities. I am sure that he will set out his own vision for the remainder of this administration's tenure shortly, so I will not attempt to steal his thunder in moving this recommendation. So I move straight to move the nomination, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. Councillor Walker, I believe you're going to second.
No, it's me.
Sorry,
Councillor
I
Warren.
do beg your pardon, Councillor Warren. I do beg your pardon.
Thank you. Like Councillor Samuel, I'd like to briefly thank Councillor Romero for her incredible dedication over the last difficult year. But this evening, I'm really delighted to second Councillor Guy's nomination for the role of council leader. He's worked tirelessly in Bathhaven North, and I'm sure he will be an excellent leader. Thank you.
Thank you. And we go straight to the vote. So I believe that is the formal protocol. Joe Morrison, is that not the protocol we go to? Do we invite comments from the floor?
Well, I don't think there's anything in the rules that prevents us, and there is an indication from Councillor Colin Blackburn that he wants to speak.
Okay, fine. Okay. So, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delivering this statement on behalf of myself, Councillor June Player, Councillor Karen Walker, and Councillor Sean Hughes. I'm sure you're aware we wrote to Councillor Guy requesting some clarification on some points, and he kindly pointed us to a newspaper article which had some information. However, we are yet to receive the promised full and final response from Councillor Guy. The 2 main concerns raised were legitimacy of Councillor Guy's candidacy and a concern regarding the confrontational tone of the language being used, as we would encourage residents to express concerns and opinions without fear, and we should welcome scrutiny and transparency. We have read the papers sent out by the Chief Executive and can see that your leader-elect has probably qualified to stand in the election using the letter of the law. We do still feel that perhaps the spirit of the law has still been missed. We are disappointed the Lib Dems feel there is a need to parachute in a leader where there are clearly some talented, capable and long-standing members amongst them. We would rather have a leader with a deep understanding and first-hand experience of Baines and its diverse regions, a history that can only be gained from living amongst us for several years. For these reasons, we feel unable to support this nomination. Of course, there is no doubt that Councillor Guy will be nominated tonight, and we can only hope that he will take the time to visit wards and ward councillors and take guidance from the knowledge they have gained from being part of their communities for several years and even decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Chair. The Conservative Group will not be supporting the nomination of Councillor Guy for the leadership of the Council. In fact, we wouldn't be supporting any Lib Dem put forward for the leadership of the Council. We cannot, in all conscience, vote for a procedural motion because we fundamentally disagree with the administration's approach and its plans for Baines, whether that's about the pursuit of the policy of restricting access to the city centre, to continue the rollout of low traffic neighbourhoods despite the obvious problems, failing to consult properly on active travel schemes, and misjudgments which show how hopelessly out of touch they are with the needs of the residents, to say nothing of the clear and explicit antipathy towards fundamental parts of our local economy and the desire to be perhaps some sort of national champion climate emergency zealot. So we will not be voting for the instalment of another Lib Dem as leader of the council for the reasons set out.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Ross.
Thank you. I'm afraid the Labour Group will not be supporting Councillor Guy for leader of the council this evening as well. I appreciate that this, in a sense, is a breach of what is normal practice when you have a group that has a clear majority on the council. But I'm afraid there have been too many questions about the qualification of Councillor Guy to actually stand in the 2019 election. I appreciate that we have had advice from the Chief Executive and from independent legal source on that qualification, and I appreciate as well that these particular rules on qualification are complex. But I'm sure, as many of you know, the independent legal advice on qualification says that despite the nomination paper being incorrectly completed, there seemed to be an underlying entitlement to stand. Now, I'm sure that there are many hundreds of nomination papers that have been filled out by councillors in this council chamber. And I'm sure, like myself, your experience is that when you put a nomination paper in, it has to be precise, it has to be exact, and it has to be correct. And this is the first time that I've ever heard of an incorrectly filled out nomination form being acceptable. So the Labour Group is seeking a separate legal advice on this. Unfortunately, that has not come through at this point. So I'm afraid this evening we will not be able to support this nomination and we will be voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Are there any others? I see nothing in the chat room. No. So we therefore go to the vote. As normal, we assume there is a majority. Now I see that Councillor Moss has proposed a named vote. You need it needs to be supported by 4 other councillors. You need to have 5 councillors. I can see Councillor Blackburn. I can only see one screen at a time, so I would ask you to put Councillor Walker, Councillor Blackburn.
To clarify, Chair, it is actually the person proposing it and then 5 other members.
I do beg your pardon.
Thank you.
Such is the trainee chair. Thank you. So we have, just go back on that one. We have Councillor Walker, Councillor Blackburn, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Player, and Councillor Hale. Okay, so we move to a named vote. That means everyone has got to call out their name rather than vote through the chat. So over to you, Jo.
Yes,
so,
thank you. Okay.
You therefore vote in favour, against, or abstain.
For the nomination of Councillor Guy, yes. Thank you. Rob Appleyard. Rob Appleyard. Tim Ball.
Or.
Sarah Bevan.
For.
Colin Blackburn.
Against.
Alison Bourne.
For.
Shelley Bromley.
For.
Neil Butters.
For.
Vic Clark.
Abstain.
Sue Craig.
For.
Paul Crossley.
For.
Jerry Curran.
For.
Chris Dando has apologised. Jess David.
For.
Tom Davis.
For.
Sally Davis.
Abstain.
Doug Deacon.
Abstain.
Winston Dogood.
For.
Mark Elliott.
For.
Michael Evans.
Abstain.
Andy Furs.
For.
Kevin Guy.
For.
Alan Hale. Councillor Alan Hale.
Abstain.
Thank you. Liz Hardman.
Against.
Steve Hedges. Steve Hedges. Councillor Hedges. Okay. Joel Hurst.
For.
Lucy Hodge.
For.
Duncan Hounsell.
For.
Sean Hughes.
Against.
Eleanor Jackson.
Against.
Grant Johnson.
Against.
Dr. Kumar.
For.
Hal McPhee.
For.
Ruth Malloy.
For.
Paul May.
Abstain.
Matt McCabe.
For.
Sarah Moore.
For.
Robin Moss.
Against.
Paul Myers.
Abstain.
Lisa O'Brien.
Abstain.
Michelle O'Doherty.
For.
Barrett Pancania.
For.
June Player.
Against.
Vic Pritchard.
Abstain.
Sorry, bear with me. Manda Rigby.
For.
Dina Romero.
For.
Mark Roper.
For.
Richard Samuel.
For.
We've had apologies from Councillor Bruce Shern. Brian Simmons.
Abstain.
Alistair Singleton.
For.
Sean Stevenson McGall.
For.
Andy Waite.
For.
Karen Walker.
Against.
Sarah Warren.
For.
Karen Warrington.
Abstain.
Chris Watt.
Abstain.
Ryan Wills.
For.
David Wood.
For.
Joanna Wright.
Abstain.
And just check, is there a vote from Councillor Rob Appleyard?
Yeah, sorry, Joe, that I went to the little boy's room. Yeah, for.
Okay. And was there a vote from Councillor Steve Hedges? No. Okay, thank you. That is carried with 35 votes in favour, 9 against and 12 abstentions.
Thank you. We move on now to agenda item 9, the appointment of committees and panels and other annual business. I believe Councillor Guy would like to move the recommendations and make a statement. Over to you, Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight's Council AGM marks a halfway stage in this Liberal Democrat administration. It is an opportunity to reflect and be grateful, to fine-tune and then double down on the promises and commitments we made back in 2019 to the people and communities of Bath and North East Somerset. Before I look forward to my priorities for the next 2 years, I want to take just a moment in retrospection. When social history comes to be written about the first year of the pandemic, councils will be judged by the quality and effectiveness of their response to this unprecedented challenges we have all faced. Baines, I have no doubt, will be seen as one that got it largely right. Through the incredible dedication, flexible innovation, creativity, and unflinching determination, the council achieved a huge amount to minimise suffering, facilitate continuing services to our communities. We owe a massive debt of gratitude to the commitment and professionalism of our staff and the many volunteers who made that happen. I want to pay particular tribute to my predecessor, Dina Romero, for her calm and focused leadership throughout that time. Thank you, Dina. And I'm delighted that you have agreed to stay in a key role in my team. My programme going forward is driven by 2 things. The first is that COVID has, of course, hit us hard financially, but more importantly, it has slowed our ability to make the progress with the planned key priorities. We now need to refocus and set that right, to drive a gear change rather than a change of direction. Second, our net zero target by 2030 is now a year closer. The climate emergency is, quite simply, the most critical issue we face. It is at the heart of everything we do. If we fail to tackle this effectively, remembering always that climate justice cannot be achieved without social justice, all else we do will be in vain. So let me talk specifics. Central to our approach, we will remain above all a listening administration. We will listen to our residents across Bath and across North East Somerset. We will consult and gather evidence, and we will always act in the light that the evidence is true, and that the Twitter sphere and social media manipulators have nothing constructive to offer, then they will be ignored. We will build on the success of the Clean Air Zone and our record of renewable energy achievements with renewed efforts to tackle carbon. By this time next year, we have delivered supportive active travel schemes, a range of low traffic neighbourhoods, including in Nez. We will seek to keep non-HGVs out of Bath once the Cleveland Bridge is complete. Improving ecology and protecting our villages and green spaces is a commitment. As part of this drive, the current development proposal for the land at the rear of 89 to 123 English Combe Lane will be withdrawn. I repeat, will be withdrawn, and the uses for this site reassessed. This site will remain in council ownership and will not be sold to avaricious developers. We have listened to the 1,000 who signed the petition for the approach golf course, and we will commit to keeping a golf course on this site subject to a valuable and viable operator being identified. We will continue to make planning an essential channel to our chosen future. We will build the first council houses in a generation. We will reassess Airbnb and student accommodation in our communities.
1 minute.
Use the planning process to promote energy efficient and well-connected development throughout Baines, and we will get the basics right. We know that poorly maintained streets, verges, and the twin scourges of litter and graffiti blight our communities. We will find and invest heavily in the necessary resources to put that right. This is a hugely ambitious and exciting time for the next 2 years. I'm fortunate to have a talented and focused committee team to deliver it, and I will introduce them later this evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I was also anticipating that you were going to move to accept the appointments of the committees and panels. Do you wish to say anything further on that, Councillor Guy? Otherwise, we can move straight to a seconder.
Yeah, I move the recommendations for the appointments committees and panels, and I'd like to thank everybody for that. And obviously, may the 4th be with you all as well. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Myers, seconding.
Thank you. On behalf of the Conservative Group, I'm pleased to second this motion. Committees and panels are an essential part of the operation of the Council. They involve councillors from across all parties and independents and tackle issues affecting residents' everyday lives and bring together a wealth of member experience and officer experience. So I'm happy to second.
Thank you. We have Councillor Jackson would like to speak on this item. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and welcome to the job you've taken on too. It's just a couple of questions. Some of you know that I was once a lecturer in New Testament studies, and any textual problem is difficult for me. Page 45, the planning details of the appointments on the planning committee, membership, frequency, and so on. There is no mention in this section on the planning committee of a vice chair. And yet at our last full council meeting in March, this post was agreed. And when we go on to look at allowances for councillors, you'll find that there is an allowance for the vice chair. We've had a singularly good vice chair over the past year. And I think this page 45 should be amended to include mention of the vice chair appropriately. Perhaps we can ask officers to do that. And secondly, there is one important committee appears to have been omitted altogether. Sometimes I feel that the Select Advisory Committee on Religious Education is a bit like Moses in the bulrushes. It always gets overlooked somehow. And yet this is a statutory body. It is extremely important for defining the religious education syllabus in this area, a process we're already doing. And I think it would be appropriate if we had a paragraph added to this report on which Dr. Kumar and myself and a council officer are the council representatives. I think this should be included in future, or rather, I think it should be done now, if that's all right. Delegate to permit in planning speak would be my language for this report, though, and I think we should thank the officers for the comprehensive way in which it's been drawn up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thank you. Yes. I hope this is the right place to make these comments. And thank you to Kevin Guy for outlining his new cabinet. Of course, what we've had for a few days is the new portfolios that actually go with those cabinet positions. And while I appreciate that that is in the gift, if you like, of the leader of council, there are certainly some aspects of the way those portfolios have been put together that has raised a few eyebrows, and I think it would be at some point useful to have a discussion. For example, with Richard Samuel having responsibility for the internal finances of the council at the same time as the external economic development, and I'm not in a sense knocking that as an idea of putting different elements within cabinet portfolios, but I think it would be useful to explore why that makeup has been put as it is. I think it's right at this point because Kevin has said who is in his cabinet. I think I'd echo his thoughts that it's good to see Dina remaining in the cabinet. I had the privilege of working with Dina as leader of council for the last couple of years, and certainly over this last year of the pandemic. Again, I'd like to offer my congratulations to her for the work she's done and the leadership she has provided over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I entirely agree with what just now Councillor Jackson talked about the Standing Advisory Committee for Religious Education, and that should be there. So in the list, and I think I'm sorry to say, but perhaps the council is not paying full attention to these important groups as well as panels, including the race panel, to be honest. And I think that should be announced earlier and it should be mentioned. And I would also like to take this opportunity, because I have not much to say, to thank Dina and the previous, all the cabinet members, and particularly, very particularly, Councillor Joanna for her work on transport.
Can I stop you there?
And everything. Thank you. I stop.
Right. I was going to say this, councillors, this is about the appointments of committees and panels. Excuse me. Right. Are there any other speakers? There don't seem to be. So we go back to Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I spoke earlier of the twin challenges we face, both critical and both fundamentally vital to the well-being of our community. We need to ensure a balanced, equitable and rapid sustainable economic recovery, and we need to be unflinching in our total commitment to the climate and ecological emergencies that we have declared. I've therefore structured the Cabinet with 2 deputy leaders, each tasked with delivering one of these major challenges and having the capacity and resources to do so effectively. Richard Samuel remains as his deputy leader of resources. He will also have included economic development within that portfolio. And I've created a second deputy leader position with particular responsibility for climate emergency and sustainable travel. And we are immensely fortunate to have Sarah Warren to fill that demanding role. So I will introduce the Cabinet to you guys. So myself as leader, the statutory deputy leader for economic development and resources will be Richard Samuel. Second deputy leader for climate emergency and sustainable travel will be Sarah Warren. Adults and council house building will be shared between Alison Bourne and Tom Davies respectively. Children, young people, communities and culture will be Dina Romero. Neighbourhood services, David Wood. Planning, Tim Ball, and transport, Manda Wrigley. Manda completes a successful term of office as mayor on the 6th of May and will be taking up her duties immediately thereafter. This is an able and powerful team with a focus and gifts to enable us to deliver our manifesto promises for our residents. And let me take a moment to thank those who are leaving the Cabinet. Paul Crossley, Neil Butters and Rob Appleyard, who have done a tremendous job over the last 2 years. I'm very pleased that they are each staying on in important and influential positions within the broader administration. Joanna Wright has been quite exceptional in the energy, focus and sheer hard work she's put into sustainable travel field, particularly walking, cycling and low traffic neighbourhoods.
1 minute.
Which we must get right to reach our ambitious climate goals. So thank you, Joanna. Your work will continue and achieve the real benefits you foresaw for our communities and for generations to come. But the team is more than just the Cabinet. Each and every councillor has got a role to play. Within the Lib Dems, we've extended the role of advocates and put dedicated people on committees they have the most interest and the most experience in. And therefore, I move the recommendations for the appointments of committees and panels. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Right, so we now will move to the vote. And as normal, we will go with a majority vote. And therefore, I call there is a question I think Councillor Jackson was hoping you would address in your summing up statement, Councillor Guy, in terms of the Vice Chair of Planning and of the SACRE. Will you address those outside the meeting?
Could I assist? Could I assist?
Yes.
Yes. Joe here. Yeah, hello. It's not my understanding that council appoints SACRE, the Standing Advisory Council, but I'll look into that, Councillor Jackson, and that's why it's listed in the terms of reference appendix, because those are the bodies that council appoints. But I will look into that, and if we've got that wrong, then absolutely we'll pick that up. And I'll also get back to you about the point about the planning vice chair. It's not a role that is listed in the proportionality table. So it is up to the committee to appoint that role, but I understand the points you made. So I'll get back to you on those if necessary. Thanks for those points.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so do I see any votes against this proposal? No. Are there any abstentions? No, thank you. It's the motion has been passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 10, contingency options decision making post May the 7th, 2021. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to ask colleagues to note the updated recommendations circulated by email. It is disappointing that we are having to approve contingency options tonight. Last week, we learned that the High Court had refused the application to allow councils to hold online and hybrid meetings beyond the 7th of May 2021. The court judgment was clear that primary legislation is needed to allow councils to use technology to hold meetings. This means we have to fall back on Plan B as described in Appendix A. These arrangements will allow decisions to continue in the interim period. However, our situation illustrates the lack of joined up thinking by government. The end of regulations allowing virtual meetings is some weeks before the end of social distancing. We are lucky in Baines that officers were able to move our AGM to tonight, and we are grateful for that speedy action. Other areas are less fortunate. In areas with elections, councils may have to use large external venues to fulfil these requirements. Colleagues, we discussed the advantages of virtual meetings in our last meeting in March. Many of us recognised there would be benefits to retaining this flexible long term. This included improved access and safety, options for holding meetings during extreme weather, reduced admissions from transport, savings on time and expenses, and the better engagement for all residents. There was a wide consensus amongst councillors around the motion we adopted almost unanimously. There is also a wide support from the LGA and other councils for national personal bodies, and therefore I move this for noting. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, I believe you'd like to second this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm happy to second the updated and revised recommendations set out in the council papers 1.1 to 1.4 and to hold all meetings in accordance with Appendix A. I am very disappointed to read that the High Court could not support remote meetings. Hopefully this will be reviewed as the year goes on, so I'm happy to second this recommendation.
Thank you. Could I ask Michael Hewitt, our monitoring officer, just to clarify that there can be informal virtual meetings? Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, Appendix A is posited on the basis that there will be informal meetings of the council held virtually just as they are today. However, those decisions that are made are only persuasive because a subsequent meeting of council will take place, a physical meeting with a minimum quorum of 15 members, and that will then have that information from the virtual meeting before it, but it will have to comply with the normal procedures of formal meetings and go through the same process of public representation and debate and decision making. And it's those decisions that will be the final decisions and enforceable in law.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have Councillor Hughes wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I have to say that I have got some concerns regarding the option that we're looking at tonight. I'm not sure that it's particularly democratic. So if I understand it correctly, we're going to have a virtual meeting where we're all going to be able to vote, debate and vote on an issue. Following that, there'll be a physical meeting where there will be only around 15 councillors present, where they're going to ratify that vote. My concern is that at that physical meeting with only 15 councillors present, there isn't anything in here that prohibits any further debate on the subjects. So each of those 15 councillors has the opportunity to have 3 minutes to speak to the public and to put their views across or to make political points. So for me, that's not a very democratic process. So it looks like, I mean, we're very much going to be reliant on some sort of gentleman's agreement, or what, not a phrase I'm particularly happy with. But some sort of understanding that no further debate will take place on subjects after we've had our virtual discussion. I am surprised that only one option was presented us tonight, because there were 2 on the table. So I'm surprised we're not debating both of the options. I will probably reluctantly be supporting this, but only in the hope that there will be that fair play will be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thank you. Labour Group will be supporting these proposals, but I just want to make a point or reiterate a point I made at the last council meeting. The way we're conducting our meetings have certainly changed massively from 15 months ago. A year ago, moving to virtual meetings was in reaction to the pandemic, and we seem to be reacting to events with the way that we're arranging our meetings, or in the case of the court judgment, reacting to a non-event. I just want to make the point that we know that meetings in the future will not be the same. We know that there are real benefits from Zoom or online meetings, the same as there are benefits for having face-to-face meetings. And at some point, this council and all other councils need to have a real discussion about what future meetings will look like, so that we decide how we want to conduct our democracy, rather than it kind of just happens as events unfold in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Jackson.
Well, I would like to second everything that Councillor Moss has just said, but I'd also like to draw your attention to a couple of points in this report which I find very disappointing. Apart from, of course, my general disappointment that although the council wrote to our elected representatives in Parliament, we got such a negative reply, and that mysteriously time could not be found for legislation to prolong virtual meetings. The first point I'd like you to look at is the question of equalities. We know that women have been disproportionately affected by or advantaged very often by having virtual meetings. I myself, as quite a disabled person, find having Zoom meetings very convenient indeed. But there's no consideration given here to how this measure will affect women and disabled people, and I think that's very disappointing. But the second point I have already raised with our legal officers this morning, which I think is more important, and that's the position of the planning committee. There are 10 members, there are about 5 officers, there may be 1 public speaker and only 1 at a time, and I think it is extremely regrettable, and I question the legal status of this procedure if it is applied to the planning committee. And I would like officers to consider whether there can't be some dispensation so that the planning committee can meet in the flesh, face to face. And I don't know how we'll do proportionality. I mean, I can't split myself in four. I'm the sole Labour representative on that committee. So what happens when we get as far as the car park? And what happens if we get to the car park and there are 100 residents of English Combe Lane come along to, or just take one example, I mean, not particularly that one, but it's a good one, come along to express their opinions in the formal post-informal meeting. So although I'll be supporting this measure, I do think that the full ramifications have not been properly thought through. Have another think, please.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Myers.
Thank you. We'll be supporting this motion. Personally, I'm concerned that in future we do place an emphasis on face-to-face meetings and consider very much in the round the technological options available, but whilst actually ensuring that we do still meet as a council and are able to represent our residents if we can. However, in the meantime, despite many of the points put forward, I have to say that I welcome the pragmatism as a best option proposal we faced to actually keeping our democracy going and ensuring that at least as councillors, we can have a full debate online and have a way of getting the business formally approved with a proportionate number of members who will actually vote, which is why we were elected to represent our residents overall. So I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Samuels.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, none of us likes this situation, as a number of members have said. And what we have to retain in this is a sense of proportion about what is going to be necessary over the next couple of months. By June the 21st, and there are no indications that this will not be the case, all COVID restrictions will be removed. So any concerns that we have about meeting arrangements really only apply from today till the 21st of June. Thereafter, there is no reason that we should be worried about meeting in person in the way that we normally do. Now, of course, there is likely to be a future risk. If there is a third wave, then the legislation and regulations around COVID, protecting against COVID, may have to be revisited. But for the moment, it is possible to construct meetings in a safe way for the members of the council who are there and also the members of the public who are in attendance. So, for example, the forthcoming meeting of the Cabinet will be held in public session and we will be there in person because it is possible to maintain social distancing requirements. That is, as Councillor Jackson has quite rightly said, very difficult for the Planning Committee, particularly where there are controversial matters. But I prefer to rely on the advice of the Monitoring Officer and the Director of Public Health as to how we should approach this on a case-by-case basis. The fact is that we have been let down by the government, who has been overly optimistic about its handling of the pandemic from the first day the cases started to emerge. And this is yet another example where the government is out of touch with the views of local government, which have been strongly expressed to it by the Local Government Association and others. However, we just have to deal with that reality. And I think the proposal— 1 minute remains. Thank you. The proposal we have before us tonight is the best that it's going to be for the moment. It's not satisfactory, but it will have to do, and we will have to make it work. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. As there are no other speakers, I will go back to Councillor Guy to sum up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think Councillor Samuels has said it all there. It's not ideal, but it's necessary. So I formally note for moving. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Right, those against these proposals, can you please register your vote? Any abstentions? No, then the vote is carried, the motion is carried. And at this stage, I suggest we take a comfort break. Can I remind members to turn off their mics if they have got them on? And we will return. It is 19:45. We will return in 5 minutes at 10 to 8. Thank you. Okay, it is 1952. I hope everyone is back. So we move to the next item on the agenda, which is the report on independent panel member allowances. I hope you've all read the report. The Liberal Democratic group have put forward a motion. So I invite Councillor Samuel to propose the motion. Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, the officer report from the monitoring officer invites council to form a view on the recommendations of the independent remuneration panel. But before I move to introduce the item, I want to pay thanks to the panel itself, led very ably by Ronnie Alexander, who has produced an incisive, wide-ranging professional report. Now, as members will know, the allowance scheme for councillors is subject to regular review, and that is the system set down in law, and that's why we have the report before us today. This report is an inevitable consequence of the changes to the composition of the council that were set in train by the previous administration around 3 years ago. And that, if you recall, for those people, those councillors who were not members at the time, led to a reduction in councillors from 65 to 59 councillors, the current numbers that we have, plus wide-ranging changes in ward structure. So that is the context of this report, and within the reduction that took place and the wide scale of changes, this did have a substantial implication for workloads that councillors have to manage. And in addition, the panel have looked, of course, across to other unitary authorities to see what allowance rates are paid in other authorities and how Bath North East Somerset compared with them. And the report is divided into two portions, really. A set of formal recommendations, which are laid out in the report that you have before you, and some advisory comments where the council is also invited to comment. The proposal tabled by my group, which I'm moving now, sets out the proposed response to those recommendations and the advisory recommendations within the report. There are some key messages that come out of the review panel's work. Now, by and large, allowance rates, particularly the basic allowances in Bath North East Somerset, have dropped behind and lagged behind other comparable authorities to the extent that there is now a substantial gap between the basic allowance this council pays councillors and other comparable councils. The panel have reflected on that fact and sought to find ways in which that gap can be closed, and that is set out in the panel's review. Now, if we take this in two parts, you will see that the panel is not recommending very much in the way of changes, if any, to special responsibility allowances, SRAs, but that they are proposing changes to basic allowance. And the panel acknowledge themselves that they have had to wrestle with the fact that this council, like many other councils, is struggling with its finances and is serving a community where many people in that community, many businesses, many individuals are also struggling financially as a result of the pandemic. So we have reflected on this very deeply, and we find the difficult balance here that is to be achieved is to ensure that for future councillors on this authority, there are rates of allowance that do not act as a disincentive to a wide range of councillors to come forward to stand for election. However, at the same time, we do not want to pose an unrealistic financial burden on this council. And that is why we are suggesting that we we depart from the panel's recommendations in as much as they relate to the phasing of increases in basic allowances. The other changes are set out in the amendment that we have tabled. I don't propose to go through those in detail, but they are by and large to accept the panel's recommendations. There are some specific changes proposed in the way that group leaders' allowances are dealt with, and those are set out. And there are comments provided on the individual areas that the panel sought advice from. So, Madam Chairman, that detail is all set out in the amended 2.1 to 2.4 in your papers, and I move.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. Can I call on Councillor Guy to second the proposal, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will formally second what Councillor Samuel has just said. You'll be pleased to know I have not got a formal speech put aside for this particular item, and I will just speak off the cuff. I think most of us will appreciate that there's a huge gulf between perception and reality when it comes to councillors' allowances. If you talk to our constituents, they think we're on tens and tens of thousands of pounds and we've all got our noses in the trough. And when you actually tell them, well, actually, no, basic allowance for a councillor is £8,000, they normally think you're lying to them or you're joking. That's how low it is. And as Councillor Samuel has wisely stated, that basic allowance does inhibit certain members of our community that could make great contributions to this council and therefore make great contributions to the community from stopping them coming forward and being councillors, because they would have to give up their job, their time looking after their children, etc., etc. And that is just not acceptable. However, what also is not acceptable is, I think, and so is the Lib Dem group, that's why we're putting forward this amendment, is giving ourselves an increase in allowances at this point in the COVID crisis. We're coming out of it and we're just starting, hopefully, our economic recovery, and there'll be large amounts of people that are suffering. So it is inappropriate to be giving ourselves an allowance increase at this time, but wise, because of the points mentioned, to delaying it for a year. And that's why I'm seconding this motion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Dr. Kumar, you'd like to say something?
Many thanks. Thank you very much. I thoroughly understand that councillors receive peanuts, extremely low allowance. But did any of us, and I repeat, any of us become councillor for the honorarium or allowance it proffers? No, and certainly not me. If we count our hours which we spend for council works, it would be much below the minimum wages. And even though I come from very, very humble background and grew up in one of the most impoverished part of the world, then also, as publicly announced, I donate significant part of this to the charities, both in our country and in India, where I was raised, and where COVID is currently creating havoc, and we are trying best to help to the communities there to the best of our ability. Anyway, public service and service to the community, that is what we love, and that's why we chose to become a councillor. I do understand that councillor's role comes with huge level of stress, trolling on social media, and open abuse on the street, which I have myself faced many times. But you're not here to make a living. You're not here you are here in order to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. You are here to enrich the community, to enrich the world, and you impoverish yourself if you forget the errand, as Wilson said. Therefore, during these incredibly difficult times, when a pittance and peanut proposed pay rise of less than 2%, in fact, it is 1% for nurses and other health workers by the central government, which is
1 minute left.
How can I accept and support huge pay rise for myself, even if it comes from next year? Though I do accept that councillors are not paid enough, and young people are not going to make this as their career without a second job. Councillors' allowance, in my view, should be also the same throughout the country, and it should be decided and directed by the LGA or the central government. Why should a Bristol councillor get paid over 14,000 in fact, and those in Bath just less than 8,000? I understand that amongst the neighbouring councils, Bath Nest councillors are paid the least, just perhaps a few £100 in fact, £300 more than Swinton councillors. But then also, I cannot support this pay rise, and I'll be abstaining from this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. We are very clear that the time isn't right now to increase the council basic allowances, given the severe impact of coronavirus on the Baines community. We recognise many local residents and businesses are struggling following the multiple lockdowns, and helping the local economic recovery is one of our top priorities as a council. And that's why we are making this proposal to delay implementing the recommendation to increase basic allowances for a year. We absolutely accept the need and the rationale behind what was the independent panel's recommendation. And this work had been pending for some years and was, I'm sure people remember, initiated before the pandemic actually hit. In the long term, we need to ensure allowances are set at a fair level. This is important if we want to attract a diverse group of local people to stand as councillors in Baines. It's a well-established principle that diversity leads to better decision-making as more voices are heard at the table. Therefore, a more diverse council will give the best service to residents. If we want to attract councillors who are from different backgrounds, such as younger people, disabled people, or those from maybe even different economic backgrounds, we need to pay the going rate. Whilst technically a voluntary role, councillors work incredibly hard for the community. We recognise the importance of listening to residents and being responsible with taxpayers' money. But we must also ensure that we are planning ahead to attract the brightest and the best to serve in the council chamber in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Moore.
Hi, yeah, I also echo what Councillor Kumar said, and I will be abstaining against this paper. I stood for election on the basis that I wanted to represent the community, not for the money that I would receive. If we're looking at getting more councillors or more diverse councillors involved, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that we ourselves have to take an increase. So therefore, I will be abstaining on this paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Very much like Councillor Kumar and Councillor Moore, I'll be abstaining on this paper as well. I do believe that councillor allowances should be set to actually ensure that people from all working groups can actually become councillors, but I do not believe we should be taking it mid-term. I'd be happy if the motion was to take it in 2023 when people know what they're standing for. Therefore, I should also be abstaining this evening in recognition of the hardworking people in my ward of Twerton who have really been hardly hit by this pandemic.
Thank you. I go back. There are no more speakers. I go back to Councillor Samuel to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be brief. Several members have made the point that it is important to maintain or to attract a diversity of councillors into our council. The sad fact is that the current makeup of the council is not representative of the community. It is slanted towards older people, and I'm afraid it is very male, more so than would be representation in the community. So if we are to attract more younger councillors and more councillors from ethnic minorities, we do need to ensure that for those people who very likely will be at the start of their working lives, there is an allowance paid that enables them to live satisfactorily. And I think that's the key point a number of members have been trying to make. I won't repeat what other members have said in terms of the arguments for delay, and I respect the views of those councillors who say that they wish to abstain on this because it is a matter of conscience and it is a very difficult decision. So, Madam Chairman, I move.
Thank you. Right, we will move to the vote then. And first of all, we will take any votes against this proposal. So can we have votes against proposal, please? Any further votes against? I'm calling for votes against at the moment. So we have Councillor Hughes, Councillor Blackburn, Councillor Player. So, okay, Joe, can we have votes abstaining now, please? Any councillors wishing to abstain? I believe that's 8, Joe, do you agree?
Yes, I agree. Yes, 8 councillors have abstained and we've had 3 councillors who voted against.
Thank you.
So it
The
is carried.
motion therefore is passed. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 12, the parental leave policy. And as Councillor Johnson has had to leave, I call on Councillor Moss to propose the motion, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Grant, for having to leave and leaving with this to move this at the last minute. But that's how life works sometimes. I think it's interesting that that this motion, also this report, actually follows the discussion on members' allowances. Because if we are going to attract younger councillors, if we are going to attract councillors with young families, we need to be providing them with support, and we need to be explicit about providing them with support. I think this originally was an idea that came from the Labour group, but certainly the majority of the work on this has been done by officers and by the corporate scrutiny panel. So I'd like to thank them for the efforts that have gone into this. Also point out that we know that there are anomalies within this. It was a difficult paper to put together, and whether it be, I think as mentioned, single member wards where you have split political representations on wards, particularly as well, which doesn't come up, councillors have particular expertise and in particular areas, and that can be lost through parental leave. But the important principle is that we are recognising that councillors do have a life outside of being a councillor, that like in the workplace, that we should be supported as it is a workplace in that sense. And I'm happy to move this report and hope it gets acceptance across the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Can I call on Councillor Good to second the motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Although the status of councillors who are not employees of the council means that employees' benefits do not apply to them, the council clearly recognises a duty of care to councillors. The council must seek to support councillors in those areas which it can manage and control. And so when council adopted the parental leave policy in September 2020, they further agreed to request the Corporate Policy Development and Scrutiny Panel to consider the matter of how the role of casework could be undertaken whilst a councillor is on parental leave or absent for other reasons, and report back to council by the next annual meeting with proposals or reasons for not bringing proposals. This we have done. The officers looked at a number of councils, just under 40, and they were contacted to see how they handled this. None of those that responded reported formal arrangements being put in place to manage casework during a period of parental or other such absence. And the majority supported or stated that it was a matter for the member taking the leave of absence to decide which responsibilities, if any, they wish to continue. So we looked at this in scrutiny, and quite a few questions were raised and quite a good discussion was held. And we want to support this report. And at our panel meeting, our chair, Councillor Myers, suggested that the panel see this item again after the first year and review lessons learned and comment to council at that stage. And the officers agreed that this would be kept under review. So, Madam Chairman, I'm very happy to second this report.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and I must apologise that I was absent at Westfield Parish Council a little bit longer than I anticipated. I think this is an extremely important measure that we should be passing tonight because of the messages it sends out and the way it puts down a marker, a sort of stamp of excellence on what we would expect to see. We sort of take it for granted in this day and age that fathers will be hands-on, get involved and so on. But we know that the percentage of fathers who are actually able to take parental leave at the time of the arrival of a child is very small compared with the number who are entitled. We're sending out a message to all dads to take advantage. But I feel it personally very keenly because my son, who works for a German company based in Reading, is getting virtually no leave. And this is not right at all, I don't think, in terms of the kind of bonding that you want to see in any family. And so I'm therefore strongly supporting this motion, these moves.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do we have any other speakers, please? No, in that case, I go back to Councillor Moss to sum up.
I'll be brief because I think most councillors here would like a bit of evening's leave. So I hope that there is unanimous support for this report.
Okay, thank you. Short but sweet. Lovely. Right, we'll go to the vote. Can I have anyone against this motion, please, this recommendation? Can you please indicate in the chat? Anyone against? Are there any abstentions? No, then it's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to agenda item 13, we have 4 registered public statements. Anyone against? So the first speaker is Kari Elizabeth Eriksson. Ms. Eriksson, would you like to, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening.
No, then it's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to agenda item 13, we have 4
Sorry, is anyone
public statements.
Yeah, I think, so I think, are you listening to the YouTube? Karen?
Yes, my apologies.
Turn that down. There's a
That took me by surprise.
Kari Elizabeth.
There we go. Okay, sorry, that was in the notes. You just caught me by surprise. I will be brief. I realize that the council is in the midst of massive change, and I look forward to seeing the new direction and the continued direction as you carry out the rest of your term and move towards the goals that we all feel are so important in this small community. I'm coming to you as the host of a business-focused radio show and a new-ish Bath resident who has business interests of my own. And my personal feeling in the time that I've been here, particularly over this last year, is there has been so much focus on, very important public health measures, of course, and active transport and the carbon neutral goals. And these are important and commendable, but I really hope that we will see an even bigger emphasis on supporting local businesses. And this can look like everything from restaurants and shops and the traditional types of businesses that we know in Bath, and some are not still here, and we need to sort that out. But there are other types of businesses. I'm a yoga teacher, for example. I'm part of a community of people who are interested in health and well-being. And this is a reason why people come to Bath. And I think that sometimes the sense I have gotten over this last year is we have not been as welcoming, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, it's understandable, but we have not been as welcoming of visitors and guests and people who can partake of businesses and services outside of the traditional ones we might be familiar with. So I would just urge the council in the for the second half of the year, and indeed the rest of this current administration, to really think about the economic recovery holistically and to engage with the business community. I know that you talk to bid, but there are a lot of people who have a lot to say. I've really found that in my show, and they have lots of really interesting insights to offer. I know everything is interconnected in terms of transport and parking and all kinds of fun issues to get involved with, but there are people who work here who have some really valuable input. So I would just welcome the opportunity to speak to you more regularly going forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask each of the group leaders if they have any factual questions, and these will require a short answer. So, Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Cara. Are you aware that I've created a new role for one of our deputy leaders, which is specifically to focus on economic development in our area? And would you welcome that?
Yes, I mean, I heard you mention in your talking points that that's an area of focus for you. So I'm delighted to hear that, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. And I'm one of many people who would like to engage on this topic. I think we have a lot to gain this summer from tourism, and there's lots of different directions that can go.
Thank you, Councillor Myers.
Could I just please clarify? Are you saying that the support for business could sit alongside the council's current priorities?
I'm absolutely saying that. I think it should be at the top of the list. I mean, it's an area of national importance. And of course, I think here in Bath, we've suffered particularly because of the added dimension with changing patterns in tourism. So yes.
Thank you. Karen, Councillor Walker.
May I defer my question to Councillor June-Player?
Thank you. Can you give any example of how the council you feel can do more for businesses?
That's not quite a factual question, Councillor Player.
Oh, is it not?
Not really. It's asking for more information.
Oh, well, I was interested whether there were any examples. So in that case,
well, let's ask Erickson if she could clarify some examples, perhaps, that she can.
Oh, fair enough. Thank you.
Yes, happy to do so. I mentioned that I am a yoga teacher, and I understand that in this recent period of kind of interim opening up, some people have been using public spaces to try to teach classes, and I have not done that, but some of the groups that I'm a part of have talked about difficulties they've had with an increase in fees, which has been detrimental to their ability to do that. I also think that just general cleanliness, which I also heard Councillor Guy say is part of the agenda going forward. I think if we're going to welcome people to the city and they want to spend time here and spend money here, it needs to look like the beautiful place it is. And that includes like the parklets. I mean, I could go on, but those are just a few examples.
I'm going to stop you there because whatever. Councillor Moss.
No supplementary question or factual question, but thank you for your statement, Kerry.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we have now Jane Reichman, please? Jane?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for hearing me. I'm here as a Bath resident and as a representative from Bath for Europe, a non-party aligned campaign group, to urge councillors to do all you can to ensure that EU citizens, or nationals from Norway, Iceland, Switzerland and Liechtenstein living in Bath and North East Somerset have been made aware of the need to apply for settled status or pre-settled status if they've lived here for less than 5 years. The deadline is June the 30th, 2021, 57 days away, and it's vital that applications are made by this date if our residents want to continue living here and accessing services such as the NHS, housing, education and employment. Although it's likely most people in employment or who are tech savvy are aware of this, there may be those who don't realise it applies to them. Particularly vulnerable are the elderly or those not comfortable with IT. Others who might not realise are people who are born here but who are not British or Irish citizens. People who've lived here for decades and think that being married to a British citizen exempts them. Also, those who were previously granted a UK permanent residency card also need to check about this, because these cards are no longer valid after June the 30th. I was thrilled to hear that an email on this subject was sent out to schools from the council, and it would be really positive if a reminder to apply could be included in further communications. Most useful would be a special EUSS applications hotline that concerned citizens calling the council switchboard could access. Please do all you can to make sure we avoid a Windrush situation on our doorstep. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rackerman. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Jane. Would you and Bath Europe want to meet myself again and the advocate in this area, Councillor Ruth Malloy?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers.
No factual question.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Jane, but no factual questions.
Thank you, Councillor Moss.
Thank you, Jane, for the statement. Probably need to declare an interest with a family member who is going through this process at the moment, but thank you for the work that you're doing to assist citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rackerman. We now call on Bob Goodman. Bob Goodman.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to start by wishing the new leader well, however long that will last. But I have to change my first part of my speech with the wonderful news that Toofer Fields have been saved for a future generation. This is a great start. So, Councillor McCabe, who over the last few days have been aggressive to me on the Toofer Fields subject, will have to listen to what his leader said. I don't mind being a broken record. I'm pleased that the council finally has introduced the CAS for the city, even though it is some 5 months late. I'm pleased to see that zone is almost the same as the one that I proposed some 2 years previously, but that is where the similarity ends. What should have been a major step in clean air for the city has been a complete shambles. Where does one start? Well, if you are driving into the city, you agree to buy a number of signs, but you have the complete confusion of whether you're included or not. All this has been done under your watch. It is affecting tourism and businesses alike. Please engage and make those changes that are necessary. The administration election leaflet boasted that cars would be exempt from the CAS. So what do? Introduce charging through the back door to penalise those who cannot affect newer vehicles by increasing parking charges for those older vehicles. This is quite shameful. Next, what has happened a few weeks ago when old types of camper vans were suddenly charged? This needs to be looked at and any money returned. Then as part of this lacklustre consultation on North Road, LNT, which has seen one of the cabinet members unceremoniously sacked, that we heard that from the horse's mouth that no modelling has been
1 minute left
to see the effect of closing the road on the CAS is quite incomprehensible. This will result in NOx levels around Bathwick and Whitcomb School being affected, and I congratulate Councillor Rigby and Kumar for bringing that to the Cabinet's attention. Then we have Cleveland Bridge. Well, you only have to look at Dyer and Butler's statement when they say Essential maintenance of the Cleveland Bridge has been timed to start after the launch of the CAS. How preposterous, as levels of pollution will be spread throughout the city and there can be no meaningful monitoring of pollution levels, and the excuses will come out time and time again. And what about the mitigation? That again has been a complete disaster. Where are all the electric charging points that would negotiate with DEFRA? If you ask tradesmen, they will tell you they had incomplete information. I was immensely proud of how the council, in my time, approached the CAS.
Madam Chairman, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I do beg your pardon. Thank you very much, Mr. Goodman. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Mr. Goodman, and thank you for your thanks, but no factual questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Myers.
Could you please clarify what it is that you think the clean air sign should say, as it's fundamental to what you were saying?
I think, Councillor Myers, that the clean air zone should be, the very first thing it just said is cars are exempt, full stop. Then I can see that there are issues with other vehicles which may or may not be within those exempt clauses, but it should have cars are exempt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Bob, for your statement. Do you believe the measures that this current administration have implemented will make this great city a ghost town?
Right. Can we just clarify, Councillor Walker, that's asking for an opinion. Can you refer it back to some of the information Mr. Goodman gave?
No, it's fine. Sorry, I'll retract that question.
Councillor, no questions. Okay, Councillor Moss.
Hi, Bob. Good to see you. I suppose a factual question. Who released a single living in a ghost town? But I suppose I'm not supposed to ask that. But no factual questions. See you in June.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am trying to follow in your footsteps, Councillor Walker, by clamping down on non-factual questions. Thank you.
As you are, Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Thank you.
Next one is Mr. Grisoni. Mr. Grisoni, Martin Grisoni. Is Martin Grisoni here?
Yes, I am here.
Ah.
Can you? I'm waving at you.
That's fine. As
you
long as you start talking, then I can come up on the phone screen. Right, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So my reasons for speaking to this new council tonight is to welcome you and hope that you can work better for all other councillors and local voters, whatever their political persuasion, to get the best for our area. Welcome back to Councillor Wood, and congratulations on surviving the putsch. I look forward to supporting you where I can, and indeed holding you to account as a concerned voter where I can't. I asked tonight to speak on recycling. I want to continue to push what I believe should be an obvious set of conclusions. First and main one is, if you make recycling more difficult, then there will be an increase in fly tipping. And moreover, I pretty much guarantee that you also will lose support amongst your electorate, and you surely have enough trouble with that already. You made it more difficult last year by making Baines the last unitary authority to have a full number of tips open, and Bath the last city in the country to have a tip open at all. The result, by your own recently released figures, was indeed of a massive increase in fly tipping. Not 2% recorded nationally in 2020, but frustratingly significantly more in Baines, 3,000 as you reported over the year to February last. For comparison, that's as much as the last 3 years of the previous administration, which is just a touch more than 2%. In respect of your new idea that was neither in the manifesto nor consulted on, namely to charge for DIY recycling such as plasterboard, rubble and tyres. If it's not blindingly obvious what will happen to a significant proportion of that, then you're sadly more deluded than I first thought. The stats from Somerset that were used in support were indeed clear, a significant increase after charging. So just a few examples from the local discussion boards where we had an awful lot of support. Mr. Egregor said the council is just nuts. They just don't understand consequences, do they? or Susan Winters of Coombe Down saying it's a crazy idea. Mr. Carlo Bacciocchi of Oldfield Park, irresponsible and bonkers. John Chapman of Lansdowne, this takes stupidity to a whole new level. And Punitcher of Dolmeads, it seems to have united all on Nextdoor through unified condemnation of the idea.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Just looking at the Baines maps of incidents, we've had 12 added since Saturday, and I do wonder how much this increase in collection and sorting costs against the projected saving that you gave last year of 70-odd thousand. So as a result of the Council's decisions to potentially save 0.006 of its budget, this will generate a massive percentage decrease in its popularity as their voters become increasingly aware. Fly tipping is extremely likely to increase, thus incurring costs far greater than the savings. This is never mind the cost in bad feeling towards our council, something I'd suggest that is really not needed. So, Councillor Wood, I would implore you to get amongst your new imported leadership and make a case to rescind this crazy idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grizzoni. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Myers.
Could you please clarify, as it's central to your speech, why charging is such a disincentive?
Well, I think the main reason I state it's a disincentive is indeed using examples from elsewhere. I mean, it was given that Somerset had said that it was not a problem, but when you looked more deeply at the figures, it really showed that it was. And I actually used to live down there at the time, and I saw the increase myself. So I think it is fairly common sense, and so I think we need to look at figures from elsewhere in order to support this idea, or indeed not support it, rather than just what I feel about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Martin, for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Moss.
Thanks for the statements. No factual questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grizzoni.
Thank you.
We now move on to the last agenda item, which is statements from councillors. And first of all, we have statement from Councillor Malloy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Citizens of European Union member countries, as well as those of Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland, who live in the United Kingdom and who do not also have British or Irish citizenship, must apply for settled status no later than Wednesday, the 30th of June, 2021. This is the application deadline set by the UK government. This means we have only 8 weeks left in which to reach anyone who might be affected by this change in the law, which came about as a result of the UK leaving the European Union on the 31st of January, 2020. The UK government has widely publicised the requirement for EU citizens to apply for settled status or pre-settled status if they have been living here for less than 5 years, but this has been primarily via online channels. I thank former council leader Dino Romero and the chief executive Will Godfrey for last autumn sending letters to all EU citizens registered as living in Bath and North East Somerset to remind them to apply for settled status in good time. I thank Councillor Kevin Guy, then Cabinet Member for Children's Services, and the Director of Education, Chris Wilford, for recently sending a reminder email about applying for settled status to schools in Bath and North East Somerset to be forwarded to parents and carers. And I thank the Director of Children and Young People Services, Mary Kearney Knowles, for her assurance that applications for settled status have been made for all Bath and North East Somerset councils looked after children and care leavers from EU and EFTA countries. Nevertheless, I still worry that some residents may not be aware of the need to apply for EU settled status, perhaps because they have no access to the internet or are simply unaware of this change in the law. I therefore have a request to the new Cabinet Member for Adult Services, Councillor Alison Bourne. Please will you ask officers to contact all housing associations, care homes and care agencies in Bath and North East Somerset to ensure their residents or clients who are EU citizens know that they must apply for settled status before the end of June and that they are helped to do so if they haven't already applied. And finally, a request to
1 minute remaining.
A request to all Bath and North East Somerset councillors. Please do all you can to spread the message in your local communities about the need for EU citizens to apply for settled status before the deadline of the 30th of June. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malloy. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, and thanks, Ruth. I hope the answer to this question is the same as the previous one. Will you join me and the representative from Bath and Europe to help create a plan to support the very valued European residents of our communities?
Yes, very happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Myers.
No factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
No factual questions. Thank you.
Councillor Moss.
Defer as always to Liz Hardman.
Oh, like that. What I'd like to ask is, are we doing anything to get this communication out to people more generally? We've gone to the schools, which is excellent to know. As an Irish citizen, I'm very lucky. I don't have to apply for a settled status because I have it already. But I do think we need to make our communication more widespread so that we get to contact people who are not aware of this through newspapers, social media, etc.
So yes, the council, in collaboration with Bath for Europe, actually are working on a mini poster which we would like to send out to all of you councillors to distribute in your different wards, because you will know best the best places to take them. For example, shops, pharmacies, doctors' surgeries, post offices if you're lucky enough to have one, libraries, churches, and so on. And community centres, so that yeah, to spread the word in that way. And just generally, where appropriate, please have conversations with your residents about this, because I would hate for anyone to fall, you know, fall through the net, as it were. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now have Councillor, and we will obviously refer that to the relevant cabinet member, and obviously you're going to meet with Councillor Guy, etc. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Councillor Butters and officers that I have worked with in the transport portfolio. We have delivered on the JLTP4, the clean air zone, residence parking zones, emissions parking, city centre security, mode shift stars in the school run, 20-mile-per-hour zones, EV charging, e-scooters, the River Line, a delivery transport action plan for Bath, the Wiltshire Whippet, the A367, mass transit and livable neighbourhoods. All of these will have a legacy in the years to come. Officers have told me that Neil and I have positively reframed their workplace and delivered on climate emergency action. We are the last generation to be able to save the earth from irreversible destruction. Many think that being green is liking what David Attenborough says, or using your own shopping bag. It is not. The climate emergency requires cultural change and system change. The climate emergency means action today. On an average day, ANPR data shows that approximately 4,000 cars make a return journey up the 3 roads that connect Bath with the area around the University of Bath. These return trips, approximately 4 kilometres per car, would require 81,120 trees planted to offset their carbon emissions. Sequestering carbon from newly planted trees takes 2 decades to make an impact. The European Commission stated that older people will have to make sacrifices in the fight against climate emergency, or today's children will face a future of fighting wars for water and food. This is not just an urgent matter, it is a difficult matter. This difficult matter is one that I have repeatedly faced in office. The active travel schemes are a clear case in point. These simple yet transformative schemes enable travel routes for many, significantly reducing carbon emissions and tackling car dependency. Yet I have been told recently that despite massive public support, I need to dump the current plans. In relation to the transport portfolio, many councillors only see as far as their ward boundaries and the election clock countdown. I have come up against parochial politics and predatory delay. The need to act now to deliver significant change has been met with slow motion sabotage. I have been repeatedly told that winning the war means some battles have to be lost. What we have is rhetoric versus action, window dressing versus real change. Political power is about doing things not just for the present or to be re-elected, but more importantly for those in the future who will benefit from the really tough decisions that we made for them now. Many people sitting outside of this theatrical talking shop will be frustrated and sceptical about the actions and the decisions of those inside it. They have good reason to be.
Time's up.
Action is required.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any factual questions, Councillor Guy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, I'd just like to thank Councillor Wright again, and no factual questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Myers, factual questions?
No factual questions.
Councillor Walker.
I'd just like to thank Joanna for getting us some signs on the A367, which will let drivers know about the accidents and fatalities that have happened along that stretch of road. But I do believe that Councillor Sean Hughes wishes to ask a question. Thank you, Joanna.
Councillor Hughes, you defer to Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Joanna. Just a quick question. I mean, following on from the free tree giveaway initiative recently, where 500 trees were given to residents. Could you tell me how many trees the Lib Dems are planning to plant, please?
I think they're planning to plant 100,000 in the next 4 years. But as I've said in my statement, 81,120 trees are just needed for 4,000 car journeys on one area of Bath. So if we're going to make any significant change, we're going to have to plant a whole lot more trees.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you've done over the last couple of years, Joanna. I'm intrigued by part of your statement. You say that that you were advised to dump the plans on active travel zones. Please, could you elaborate on who actually said that to you?
So our new leader, Councillor Kevin Guy, sent me an email on that, and that's probably one of the reasons why I'm no longer in Cabinet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm sure your statement will go to the Climate Emergency Cabinet member.
Thank you.
As there are no other matters, I am happy to close the meeting at 8:45. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for tolerating my newness and occasional